This is the all-new Audi A4, and yes, it does look like the outgoing Audi A4, but that's not a bad thing because this car looks really stylish and very, very classy indeed. Key highlights include that big Audi goatee grille up front, as well as those nicely shaped lamps. The headlights now get an indent in them to give them a different look, and the grille also is a lot more sharper than before. The well-sculpted bumper up ahead, as well as the pronounced wheel arches, give it a nice and very muscular look. The back end remains more or less unchanged from the outgoing car, but overall, this is a really premium and luxurious looking car. As soon as you step inside, you will really be wowed with the cabin experience because this cabin really is in a league of its own and really is very different from the outgoing car. Well, you get a very cockpit-like theme over here with the dashboard slightly tilted towards the driver. Well, everything inside the cabin has a really premium as well as luxurious feel to it, and the top of the dashboard as well as the top of the door pads here are made from the finest quality of plastics, and even the lower end of the dashboard, where a lot of people don't pay attention to, is really very well bolted together. Well, the biggest talking point inside the new A4 is the virtual cockpit theme. This cockpit looks really cool and very classy, and of course you can change it by just a couple of buttons over here to whatever you want. If you want to see the navigation maps in a bigger font and a bigger size, you can of course do that over here. Well, the other highlight, of course, apart from that virtual cockpit theme, is this huge slat for the aircon vents. Now these ones of course don't throw air, but they look really cool. Well, so are there any negatives inside the cabin? To be honest, there aren't any, but if I have to nitpick, then I will of course choose this volume button, which is really small and a little fiddly to operate. Well, so here I'm in the back seat of the new A4, and as you can see, headroom is more than adequate. And why is that? Because Audi has scooped out the roof over here, so even for someone who is around 6 feet in height, or maybe even taller than that by a couple of inches, headroom should not be a big issue. Well, knee room also is more than adequate, and I have set the front seat for someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10", and even then, as you can see, I have plenty of knee room. So in terms of rear seat space as well as comfort, the A4 is pretty good. Well, what also adds to the sense of luxury over here is the fact that you get your own AC vents, and you also get plenty of place below the front seats where you can stretch your feet. Well, there is a huge hump in the floor panel over here, but that's quite okay because all its other rivals, including the Jaguar XE, the BMW 3 Series as well as the Mercedes C-Class, have this hump. So all these cars offer you similar levels of comfort as well as space at the back. But the good point about the A4 is the fact that the footwells are pretty big enough to house the feet of whoever's sitting over here, so it should be less of a compromise, and this car can accommodate 3 people at the back at a pinch. And if you only want to have 2 passengers over here, you can always pull out this little armrest, and you also get a little hidden tray away where you can of course keep a little bit of cash. If you are of course suffering from the 500 and 1000 rupee ban at the moment, you can of course hide away those 100 rupee notes and tell your relatives at home that you don't really have too much cash. But jokes apart, if you are someone who enjoys being backseat driven, then the A4 really is a class act. Well, the Audi A4's boot is around 500 liters in space, which is very similar to the Mercedes C-Class's boot as well as the BMW 3 Series boot. But the good point is that the opening is really wide, which means that if you have a big box to load into it, it should not be a big issue. There is a bit of a hump, but it's not a big one, so loading this car should not be a strain on your back. And it really is a very wide boot and a very square shaped boot, which means that loading in those big boxes and hauling this car for those big airport transfers should not be an issue at all. Well, so here I am driving the new Audi A4, and remember this car comes with only one engine option. There's only a 1.4 TSI petrol engine on sale, which I am driving at the moment. There's no diesel at the moment on sale in India, and a diesel engine will come out eventually, but that will be only in the middle or towards the later part of 2017. And this engine makes about 148 bhp of power. Now, power is transmitted to the wheels via a 7-speed automatic S-tronic gearbox. And it's a pretty good gearbox. It's a pretty quick gearbox, both in terms of downshifts as well as upshifts. And you can of course change gears by using the shifters over here behind the steering wheel, and that adds to the sense of driver involvement on this car. But you of course get Audi's drive select system on this car, which means that you can change the characteristic of the engine as well as gearbox on this car. Well, this engine is as smooth as butter. It really is as efficient and as desirable as a Swiss made watch. In fact, I could just go on and use a lot of superlatives for this engine. It really is the best engine in terms of its refinement. It really is a very sweet and a very smooth motor. Well, power delivery is really very linear and it's available from a relatively low RPM. Now Audi has reduced a lot of weight on this car, and that along with this crisp engine really makes it one of the best cars in terms of performance, and you can hit 0 to 100 in about 8.5 seconds, which are very good figures considering the segment that this car is in. Well, this car is really very quick, so you have to be a little careful with your right foot. And why do I say that? Well, because before you know it, this car will get up to speeds which are illegal on most Indian highways, and you might be caught by authorities. And the suspension really is tuned more for comfort rather than for sporty handling, which is pretty okay, because most buyers in this segment are buyers who prefer to be chauffeur driven in and prefer comfort over sporty handling, so that's quite okay. Well, so the steering wheel on the A4 is pretty light to operate. It's not a very heavy steering wheel, which is pretty okay, and which is a good thing, because if you drive yourself in the city, you really have to do a lot of turns, and you have to of course park this kind of tight spaces. Well, it's only in the city at slow city speeds that some of those bigger potholes will manage to enter the cabin. Well, as the speeds rise when you are on the highway, the car feels more stable and the ride comfort also improves as the speeds increase. Well, so the A4 really is a long distance muncher, and what that means is that you can simply sit in this seat in the morning, drive from Delhi all the way up to Chandigarh, or maybe from Bombay to Pune. Then this is one of the best cars to do it in. Well, why do I say that? Well, because the A4 really does cocoon you from everything outside. It has a rock solid and a very stable ride, and nothing really does manage to unruffle its feathers on those long highway trips, and it has a very, very smooth petrol engine. Well, if you're in the market for a premium luxury car which offers you a very refined petrol engine, a classy cabin, as well as a very sophisticated image, then the A4 really is your best bet.